Las Vegas didn't lose money because its machines were broken. It lost money because one man understood them better than the people who built them. In 1980, in a quiet, unremarkable apartment in Tulsa, Oklahoma, a 35-year-old TV repairman was running out of options. His name was Glenn Carmichael, and nothing about him looked dangerous. He fixed locks, replaced capacitors, and made about $18,000 a year, barely enough to keep his family above water. Bills stacked up. Credit cards maxed out. His car needed repairs he couldn't afford. His kids needed shoes he didn't know how to pay for. The American dream didn't collapse for Tommy in a dramatic moment. It eroded quietly month after month until survival itself became the problem. Tommy wasn't reckless, greedy, or chasing luxury. He was practical, he was skilled, and he was tired of doing everything right and still falling behind. Then a single idea entered his life, not as a crime, but as a question. What if the system wasn't unfair, just poorly defended slot machines he was told weren't magic? They were mechanical. They counted coins, trusted sensors, followed rules. And rules once understood could be bent. What began as curiosity quickly turned into realization, and realization into something far more dangerous. Because when a man who fixes broken machines realizes the system itself can be taken apart, the line between survival and crime stops being moral. It becomes mechanical. And that moment right there is when Las Vegas began to bleed. Slot machines don't look alive, but they are built on trust. In the late 1970s, before microchips and encrypted software, most slot machines were nothing more than disciplined mechanical systems: gears, springs, levers, coin counters, and switches working in obedient sequence. Every pull of the handle assumed one thing above all else: that a real coin had entered the machine. That assumption was the foundation of the entire business, and it was the crack Glenn Carmichael would eventually pry open. When Tommy first saw a slot machine up close, not as a gambler but as a technician, he didn't see flashing lights or chance. He saw tolerances, clearances, moving parts that had to align perfectly every single time. To him, a slot machine wasn't entertainment. It was a device designed by humans, and therefore imperfect. His friend Ray showed him the slider, a thin strip of bent metal attached to a wire, crude in appearance but devastating in effect. Inserted at the correct angle, it interfered with the coin-counting mechanism, blocking the internal sensor from registering whether money was actually being fed into the machine. The slot machine didn't verify reality, it accepted signals. And the slider lied. The first time Tommy watched the trick work, there was no adrenaline rush, no celebration. Just a soft, mechanical rhythm as quarters spilled into the payout tray one after another. That sound changed something in him. Not because of the money, though the money mattered, but because of what it represented. The machine wasn't being forced, it wasn't being damaged, it was doing exactly what it was designed to do, based on information it believed to be true. Tommy didn't feel like he was stealing. He felt like he was correcting a flaw no one else had noticed. That distinction mattered. It allowed him to sleep at night. It allowed him to justify the next step. If the machine could be fooled so easily, then maybe the problem wasn't the act. Maybe the problem was the system that never expected someone like him to look this closely. As a locksmith, Tommy had spent his life learning how things failed quietly. Locks didn't break loudly. They failed because someone understood them better than their maker. Slot machines, he realized, were no different. And once that realization settled in, there was no going back. The moment he understood how the machine believed, he also understood how far that belief could be pushed. The first few wins were supposed to be temporary, a cushion, a way to breathe again. That was the lie Glenn Carmichael told himself as he drove back from Las Vegas with nearly $900 in his pocket, more than he normally earned in 2 weeks of honest work. But once a system reveals its weakness, it never closes itself again. It invites escalation. And escalation is where curiosity turns into commitment. Back in Tulsa, Tommy didn't celebrate. He studied. He bought old slot machines at auction and dragged them into his garage, stripping them down piece by piece under fluorescent lights. Where other people saw gambling devices, he saw engineering decisions. Why this spring instead of that one? Why trust a single counter instead of redundancy? Every answer led to another vulnerability. The slider evolved thinner metal, cleaner edges, a precise bend measured in degrees, not guesses. What began as a crude trick became a calibrated instrument. With each improvement, the machine lost another layer of defense, and Tommy gained confidence that bordered on inevitability. Casinos responded the only way they knew how, by upgrading. Shields were added, counters reinforced, new mechanisms introduced to stop exactly what Tommy was doing. But each upgrade only confirmed what he already understood. The house wasn't smarter, just faster to patch. So Tommy adapted again. He stopped blocking the machine and started triggering it. The monkey paw was born, a delicate tool made from guitar string and shaped metal designed to reach deep inside the machine and flip the switch that told it a coin had passed. It demanded patience, muscle memory, and touch. There was no rushing it. Tommy didn't look into the machine. He listened to it through his fingertips, navigating blind like a locksmith picking a lock in a pitch-black room. Then came the moment most cheaters would have walked away. In the mid-1980s, slot machines went electronic. Mechanical switches disappeared, replaced by optical sensors. The monkey paw was useless overnight. The easy money was gone. But Tommy didn't see an ending. He saw a new language. Light, shadow, interruption. He realized the machine didn't count coins. It counted the absence of light. And absence, unlike metal, could be manipulated without leaving a mark. The light wand was small, almost laughably simple. A battery, a bright LED, a curved housing thin enough to reach the sensor. When activated, it blinded the machine just long enough to erase its sense of limit. Coins poured out without error, without alarm, without resistance. For 90 seconds at a time, reality bent in Tommy's favor. And in those moments, standing calmly as quarters filled the tray, he crossed an invisible line. This was no longer about survival. This was mastery. He wasn't playing the game. He was rewriting the rules faster than the system could respond. For years, no one could explain what was happening, and that was precisely why it worked. Tommy Glenn Carmichael didn't win like a cheater. He won like a statistic. Each casino saw only fragments, a lucky retiree here, an older machine paying out a little more than expected there. No alarms were triggered, no guards were alerted. Individually, every incident fell inside the boundaries of normal variance. But systems don't fail in isolation. They fail in patterns. In 1995, inside a quiet office at the Nevada Gaming Control Board, an analyst noticed a number that refused to disappear. A marginal deviation, roughly 0.3% in payout rates across slot machines manufactured between 1989 and 1993. On paper, it looked insignificant. In practice, across millions of spins and hundreds of casinos, it represented tens of millions of dollars evaporating without explanation. The machines weren't broken. The math was. And math doesn't lie without help. Surveillance footage offered no obvious answers. The cameras showed nothing criminal, nothing dramatic. Just hands moving at slightly unusual moments. Players leaving sooner than expected, wins that ended without celebration. What stood out wasn't what people were doing, it was what they weren't doing. No cheering, no lingering, no reinvestment of winnings. The behavior was precise, almost surgical. Someone knew exactly when to stop. The FBI stepped in quietly. They called it Operation Light Out. Instead of chasing suspects, they chased behavior travel records, overlapping casino visits, financial deposits made in cash, always just below reporting thresholds. Slowly, a map began to form. Cities, dates, machines. And at the center of it, like a shadow that refused to resolve into focus, was a familiar name. Tommy Glenn Carmichael. Arrested once before. Supposedly reformed. But appearing again and again, separated by geography, united by probability. Agents followed him for days without confrontation. They watched him lose, patiently win briefly, and move his hand toward the payout chute with a confidence that didn't belong to luck. By the time they were certain, there was no urgency left. The question was no longer whether someone was cheating the machines. The question was how long the machines had been losing, and how much more they would lose if no one stopped him now. The end did not arrive with sirens or chaos. It came quietly, the same way the crime had lived for years. November 4th, 1996, mid-afternoon at the Mirage. The casino floor hummed with its usual artificial calm, blinking lights, looping melodies, the low murmur of people chasing luck. Tommy Glenn Carmichael stood at a machine near the second floor, far from the noise, far from the crowds. He had done this hundreds of times, 5 pulls, 4 losses, 1 small win. The rhythm was familiar, comforting, almost procedural. When the payout began, Tommy reached into his jacket and felt the smooth shape of the light wand between his fingers. He had learned not to rush. Rushing created mistakes. But this time, before the wand reached the chute, a hand rested firmly on his shoulder. Not aggressive. Certain. Tommy didn't turn around immediately. He didn't need to. He recognized the weight of authority without seeing it. "Tommy Carmichael," a voice said calmly without accusation or anger, "you're going to come with us." In that instant, 16 years collapsed into a single breath. Every garage experiment, every quiet win, every line he told himself about control and intelligence. Gone. He pulled his hand back slowly, the light wand emerging with it, unmistakable, now thin metallic out of place. There was no argument to make, no explanation that could undo what it represented. As he was led away through the casino, no one stared. No one knew. That anonymity hurt more than judgment ever could. On paper, the charges were devastating: 17 counts of cheating at gambling, fraud, possession of illegal devices. Up to 85 years in federal prison, a life sentence measured in statutes and ink. Sitting alone afterward, the adrenaline gone, Tommy understood the truth he had avoided for years. Mastery doesn't make you invisible forever. Gravity always collects. And this time, it had finally caught up. Tommy Glenn Carmichael didn't try to run, and he didn't pretend innocence. Sitting in a holding room under fluorescent lights, he understood something with absolute clarity: the system no longer needed to catch him again. It needed to understand him. And that realization became his leverage. When prosecutors laid out the numbers: decades in federal prison, everything erased. Tommy offered something rarer than remorse. He offered insight. Not theories, not guesses, but the exact logic of how the machines failed, why security missed it, and how someone like him would do it again if given the chance. The deal that followed wasn't mercy, it was pragmatism. Tommy agreed to surrender every device he had ever built: sliders, monkey paws, light wands, prototypes that had never left his garage. He explained how each one worked, what angle the hand moved, at how long a player waited before acting, what behaviors surveillance should never ignore. For years, casinos had watched machines. Tommy taught them to watch people. The shift was subtle but decisive. Security teams learned that real cheating didn't look like excitement. It looked like restraint. It looked like someone who knew exactly when to stop. In exchange, Tommy avoided a federal sentence that would have erased the rest of his life. He served probation, paid fines, accepted a permanent ban from casinos in Nevada. And then something strange happened. The same industry he had quietly drained for years began calling him. Casinos hired him as a consultant, paying thousands of dollars a day to explain how he had beaten them. Standing in front of security rooms filled with former adversaries, Tommy held up devices that once fit unnoticed in his jacket pocket and explained calmly how much damage $12 worth of materials had caused. There was no triumph in it, only irony. Tommy hadn't reformed because he was forgiven. He reformed because the game had changed. The vulnerabilities he exploited were sealed not by technology alone, but by awareness. The era of mechanical slot machine cheating ended not with a software patch, but with the mind of the man who perfected it being turned inside out. In teaching the system how to see, Tommy closed the door he once slipped through so easily. And in doing so, he became something harder to categorize than a criminal or a hero. A warning embedded permanently into the architecture of the machines themselves. Tommy Glenn Carmichael didn't just cheat slot machines, he exposed a truth that makes people uncomfortable. Systems don't fail because they're evil. They fail because they're built on assumptions. Casinos assumed players wouldn't understand the machines. Employers assumed skilled labor would always accept less. Society assumed that following the rules would eventually be rewarded. Tommy's story sits at the intersection of those assumptions breaking down. This isn't a celebration of crime. It's a warning about what happens when intelligence outpaces accountability. Talent, when cornered, doesn't disappear, it redirects. And when systems are slow to adapt, the people who understand them best will always find the cracks first. Sometimes those people wear suits. Sometimes they carry tools in their pockets. The difference is rarely morality. It's opportunity. For 16 years, Tommy stayed invisible not because he was lucky, but because no one was looking in the right place. The machines were watched. The math was trusted. Human behavior was ignored. And when the system finally learned to see patterns instead of incidents, it was already too late. The damage was done, but the lesson remained. In the end, the casinos survived. Stronger, smarter, more profitable than ever. Tommy survived too, reshaped into something useful to the very system he once defeated. But the real question lingers beyond this story. How many other systems are bleeding quietly right now? Not because they're broken, but because they trust the wrong things. If this story made you think, like this video. If you believe others should hear it, shares it. And if you want more investigations that go beyond headlines and ask harder questions, subscribe. Because the most dangerous failures aren't loud. They're the ones that look normal until someone proves otherwise.